Hearing the audio from down the hall.
Okay.
But yeah, the boardroom isn't open to the public yet.
And I want to thank everyone for their patience. We'll be starting here in just a second. You back, Bill? We're just waiting for Bill Deaver to return.
Jason, are you able to hear me?
Yep.
And Bill, please let us know when you're back.
Huh?
Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back now. I just stepped out for a minute.
Yeah, okay. The meeting of the Mojave Air and Spaceport Board of Directors, April 20th, 2021. Call the meeting to order. Roll call, please. Director Barney.
Here.
I think you're muted. Thank you. Director Deaver.
Here.
Director Coleman.
Here.
Director Morgan.
Present.
And Director Ballantyne, present. Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion approved.
Is that Coleman?
Morgan.
Okay, thank you, Bob. And can I get a second?
Coleman approved. Seconds.
All right, I have a motion by Director Morgan, a second by Director Coleman to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor? Director Barney?
Aye.
Director Deaver?
Aye.
Director Coleman?
Aye.
Director Morgan?
Aye.
And Director Ballantyne? Aye. Community announcements. Member of the audience may make announcements regarding community events. Is there anyone out there that would like to make any community announcements?
I'd like to just say Plain Crazy Saturday had a decent turnout considering it's still COVID pandemic conditions. So thanks to all that participated.
Thank you, Bob. Someone's had a phone ringing. All right. Is there anyone else with any community announcements? Okay. Next item is a consent calendar. Items A, minutes of regular board meeting April 6, 21. And item B, check register dated April 15th, 2021 for $48,974.90. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the consent calendar from Barney.
Deaver, seconds.
All right. I have a motion by Director Barney, a second by Director Deaver. All in favor, Director Barney?
Aye.
Director Deaver?
Aye.
Director Coleman?
Aye.
Director Morgan?
Aye.
Director Ballantyne? Aye. Consent calendar is approved. Next item, item A, Brown Armstrong, Accountancy Corporation engagement letter. Is that you, Scott?
I think
Carrie.
that's probably Carrie.
Okay, Carrie?
Yeah, that's for me.
Thank you.
Hard to believe that a whole year has passed now, but we are due to do our annual audit that will take us to June 30th, 2021.
Brown Armstrong has sent over their engagement letter for them to complete our annual audit, as well as our single audit, which we have to do when we receive $750,000 from the FAA each year. My request is just for you to accept the proposal from Brown Armstrong to complete our audit for 2020-2021.
All right, are there any questions from the directors regarding this? All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve the audit engagement for Brown and Armstrong. Do I have a motion?
Motion, Deaver.
Thank you, Bill. Have a second?
Second by Coleman.
All right, and roll call, Director Barney,
Aye.
Director Deaver,
Aye.
Director Coleman,
Aye.
Director Morgan,
Aye.
and Director Ballantyne's aye. Motion carried. Next item is item B, hearing for consideration of possible adoption of a resolution for necessity to acquire certain real property or interest in real property by eminent domain, Hangar 927.
I'll handle this,
Okay.
if you'd like.
Please, go ahead.
Now is the time and the place for the public hearing on the district's resolution of necessity to condemn Hangar 927. The district is doing this as part of the Taxiway C improvement project. The district hired Berryman and Associates to conduct an appraisal of the value of the 927 property. That appraisal was sent to Scaled Composites for its review. Scaled Composites was also sent a notice of this hearing. Scaled is the tenant for 927 and owner of the hangar. Our trial counsel, Doug Gosling, has received a letter from counsel for Scaled Composites confirming that they have received notice of this hearing. And so at this time, if there's anyone from Scaled Composites who would like to comment on this resolution, now would be the time for that.
Yes, thank you. Members of the Board of Directors and Mr. Chair, my name is Kevin Brogan. I am condemnation counsel for Scaled Composites. It's our position that given what had transpired at the last meeting of this board, it makes sense to continue this hearing on the proposed adoption of a resolution of necessity to condemn Hangar 927 until the next meeting of this board. And during this period, Scaled and Mojave Airport can determine whether there is true necessity to condemn Hangar 927. And in the interim, we'd ask for a copy of the FAA grant application and the award. Now, to the extent the airport has an urgent need for possession of the hangar, Scaled Composites is willing to work with Mojave Airport Board to accommodate those needs once there's been a review and consideration of the grant application, the award, and the resolution at this continued hearing. If the board's not agreeable to continuing this hearing for that short period of time, we would note our objection to the resolution of necessity on the grounds that there's a lack of evidence to support the required findings, in particular, that the condemnation of Hangar 927 is necessary for the proposed project. We would request that the presentations, recordings, and minutes of the April 6th board meeting be made part of the record on this matter. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I know Mr. Kelly would now like to be heard.
All right, Mr. Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, members of the Mojave Air and Spaceport Board, staff, and board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of this resolution of necessity for Hangar 927. We at Scaled Composites would like to acknowledge all the efforts, past and continuing, of the airport administration with respect to improving the airport's infrastructure to support its tenants, both commercial and general aviation. Respectfully, we request the postponement of this resolution of necessity proceedings until the next regular scheduled board meeting based on information presented during the April 6th, 2021 board meeting. We believe a full report from the airport CEO on all factors surrounding this situation and his actions to find out from the FAA if the row of hangars can stay in place until there is an actual recurring need to remove the row of hangars. As we continue forward this objection, there are, in the resolution necessity, the California Code requires conditions be established. There are 4 conditions that are required. I'd like to comment on 3. The first one, the public interest and necessity require the project. Scaled Composites does not believe the public interest and necessity require this project in its entirety. We do respect and understand that the paving conditions were horrendous and they actually need it. However, the information presented in Bob Morgan's presentation on the 4-6 meeting would reduce the number of hangars to the public and reduce the airport's revenue. Therefore, we do not believe that there is a necessity given the weight limits of the runway 826 and 422. The project is planned, the second condition, the project is planned or located in the manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. Maximizing the greatest public good and least private injury should be the airport maintaining the current hangar count and size, since the hangars, I do believe, are not in violation of AC 150-5300-13A. The second piece, the private parties will not be made whole due to the lack of the airport's inventory and loss of private parties of suitable replacement size and location. The airport has no current plans on replacing hangars or the project or how it would actually be paid for. If this were allowed to go forward, the airport would take a flight test asset from Scaled with no suitable replacement. I realize value is not being discussed today, but the fact that Scaled would lose a flight test asset 13 years prematurely and no suitable replacement should actually be stated in this proceeding. The last piece was the property, last condition. The property sought to be acquired is necessary for the project. First piece to that, the taking of Hangar 927 is not necessary at this time, as pointed out in Bob Morgan's presentation. Taxiway Charlie services a large ramp area to the west of the tower, and higher weight limits are appropriate. At this point in time, I do not believe a Group 3 aircraft, and I am no expert in airport management or weight requirements, but I do believe a Group 3 aircraft would not have a need to taxi past Hangar 927 to access runway 826 or 422 at this current time. Scaled has not received specific details outlining what regulations are being violated with Hangar 927 as it opposes to AC 150-5300-13A. Me as just an outside observer looking at the package that was in today's board meeting, slide 58 and slide 60 show T-Hangar 990 in the TOFA, and I'm not sure the appropriate pronunciation of that, but I believe it's taxiway object-free area. However, slide 61 shows an accommodation for this hangar. So I see a accommodation was actually made through the FAA by the board during the planning time for this tenant on this hangar. Also, something that's of curiosity to me shows that the 93-foot distance stated in slide 60 from the center of the taxiway of the edge of the TOFA is for an aircraft design group number 3. I believe that's a 79-foot to 117-foot wingspan. And I think what we've learned is there is not a need for a Group 3 aircraft to taxi past these T-hangars at this time. In closing, it's my opinion that the airport staff and board members agreed with Bob Morgan's presentation at the last board meeting and acknowledges the row of hangars do not violate AC 150 due to the runway 826 and 422 weight limitations and wingspan of aircraft in these groups. The airport acknowledges the need for the hangars and allows the hangars to stay in place should have been brought up in the planning and application phase. At this point, I do not see how the airport has put forth a case to prove a necessity to take a flight test asset away from Scaled 13 years prematurely. I do want to thank you guys for your consideration, and I do want to offer our help and support in any way possible in approaching the FAA and determining if the taking of these hangars are absolutely necessary.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for your comments. All right, so Mr. Lindner, following the meeting on April 6th, did you have conversations with the FAA regarding its designation of the runway and taxiway?
That is correct. We confirmed through FAA the taxiway, Charlie, and runway 26 are currently Group 3 elements. They are not currently Group 2, as previously indicated in the previous board meeting. They're Group 3, and the Group 3 taxiway object free area, off the top of my head, I believe is 186 feet in width. And in order to meet that requirement, that's driving the removal or relocation of those hangars. I do agree with Mr. Kelly in that there should have been provisions made in the planning process to address the removal and relocation of these T hangars with replacement of other facilities. However, that was not done. It is necessary at this time to address FAA's issues, and the reason it's becoming an issue is because the taxiway has been operating in non-compliance actually all along. It's just so now that FAA is funding the rehabilitation of taxiway Charlie, and therefore is going to require that taxiway to be brought into compliance.
All right. Are there any directors who have comments on this item? So,
excuse me, I have a question for Todd. Did the FAA say anything about holding off on giving us a little time on this thing, or do they insist that they want to go us to demolish the hangars in June?
No. Thank you, Mr. Deaver. Yes, FAA said that they would allow us to leave those structures in place until we had determined a path forward.
Good.
When you say until you've determined a path forward, what exactly does that mean, like timeline or event-wise?
That means they will allow us the time necessary to make the necessary modifications to the airport layout plan, complete the environmental process for the new T hangars, and make some decisions on whether or not we're going to replace those T hangars and how we're going to do it, who's going to fund it. A specific timeline was not discussed.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you for that.
Did the FAA grant the airport the right to change the taxiway C project and leave those hangars in place while the taxiway C expansion is going on? Or is the time frame to reach that resolution built to within the project timeline?
Built within the project timeline. So in other words, there will come a time, yes, when that project could potentially interfere with those T hangars.
So what is, just to clarify, Scott, it's not it's not a taxiway expansion.
Right.
The taxiway improvement project.
Right. I mean, the only expansion would be demolishing those buildings.
So is the FAA expecting us to proceed with the project as currently designed and funded?
That's correct.
Okay, so when you say we have an extension of time, that extension of time is for us to either take the building by condemnation or to negotiate a deal with Scaled.
That's true.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to be clear that it's not an open-ended extension.
FAA did say that they would allow, if we wanted to move this to the end of the project, as far as the removal,
yeah,
that was fine. They would not allow us to close the grant with that unaddressed.
Okay. So hangar 927 will have to be removed one way or another within the time frame of the project. Okay.
True.
All right. So, so are there any other director comments?
Mr. Coleman has one. You could?
Yes.
Now,
Go ahead, Chuck.
you talked about new T hangars somewhere. Is that kind of location or the equivalent to 12 hangars like they're being torn down? Or what is that equivalent in terms of T hangars?
We haven't talked in specifics. However, it would come down to a couple of things. Number one, the square footage that's being removed, replacing with the same square footage or more, depending upon demand. I think, speaking only for myself, the primary event that we want to address right now is the do what we can to assist the folks with Scaled and address that issue.
So this is a complicated and unfortunately a sticky issue. I'd like to make a motion that we grant Scaled the 2-week extension to completing the motion that Scott's proposed, so that they can get a better understanding of what's going on and proceed at the next meeting. Because it's all about communication and understanding here, I think, is where this is going to turn out the best.
Let me say that I'm certainly not opposed to continuing this to the next meeting. It's not, you don't have to take action on it. The board can just table it until the next regularly scheduled meeting. And given Mr. Brogan's comments about Scaled's willingness to discuss immediate possession with the district, I think that if the parties can find a solution outside of an eminent domain action, that certainly no one would object to that. So if the wish of the board, and given that the FAA has also said that while this has to be done within the scope and time frame for the current taxiway project, but it doesn't have to be done in the next couple of weeks, I think that continuing it for 2 weeks is entirely appropriate if that's the wishes of the board.
Go ahead, my comment.
Of course.
One of the things that was, or one of the items that was brought to my attention in particular, a question that was raised, and I will tell you, I'm not certain who raised the question, but the question was, do the T hangars have to come down in the June timeframe? And no, that there's the June timeframe. I guess that's when it was originally scheduled to occur. It does not have to happen by June. I think the project itself is supposed to be completed in the August-September timeframe. I am only speculating, but I get the impression from the Federal Aviation Administration that they would be fine if this was something that we didn't, if we didn't remove or demolition these T hangars until the August timeframe, if that's what is required.
So part of that calculation will also be working with the contractor on the project. But if we can move it from June to August as a practical matter, then that's fine. But by August, this will be wrapped up.
Sure.
Right. So Mr. Brogan, perhaps in the next couple of days, we can have further discussions on the possession issue, and perhaps Mr. Kelly and Mr. Lindner can continue discussions on the topic as well.
That sounds good.
Okay, so
We'll continue this to next board meeting.
if that is the inclination of the board, then yes, we'll continue it to the next meeting.
Is that in agreement with the board that we'll continue this to next meeting?
Yes.
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 Sure.
And I agree too.
Okay. All right, so then we will put that on the agenda for the first May meeting.
Thank you. Next item is reports. We have a CEO General Manager report. Todd?
Thanks, sir. The Air Traffic Control Tower now is fully staffed following the addition of Mr. Devin White. And Mr. White was successfully completed his certification, FAA certification on April 12th. That was very positive. The instrument approach for runway 1230 will be is underway, being headed up by Mr. Bob Abbott, Hughes Aerospace. That project has currently been assigned to a specialist for review and determination from FAA. Hopefully, I've been reaching out, trying to identify what the completion date of that is. Looking forward to having that approach. Taxiway Charlie rehab construction, which we've already talked about, it's on schedule, actually running a day to 2 days ahead of time. And that, as we talked about previously, we've had conversations with FAA. They've confirmed that the hangars are going to have to be removed or relocated. John Himes' last day was April 9th, and currently we're receiving a significant level of interest in a new Director of Operations position, getting ready to start going through those resumes and identifying potential candidates. As I understand, the Plane Crazy activity or event this past Saturday was a huge success. I had previously authorized air traffic services to work that day, considering that there was the potential for straddle launch to have some activities with all the construction and all the activity. I thought that was something that was probably necessary and probably looking towards the safest way to handle and address that situation. As many of you know, straddle launch, they had to scrub their flight yesterday. It's been rescheduled for looks like this Thursday or Friday. So looking forward to that. Go Strato, hope you do it. New agreements. We signed a agreement with a company called Rail Letson, $23,300 to conduct an actuarial evaluation to determine the district's other post-employment benefits and liability. That's something that's necessary and going to have to be done in order for us to carry out the internal audit, which will start in the not too distant future. And it'll be the data from that report will be used as part of that, as part of the audit. The Cal Office of Emergency Services issued us a grant for $68,576.93. That will be used for the purchase of a emergency generator that will be located in the tower. Through the CARES Act, we were able to submit receipts through December 2020 for about $46,000. It's now been brought to our attention there's additional funds through the CARES Act, and we are submitting entered into an agreement with Kern County to collect an additional $11,369.85. And new leases, we entered into an agreement with Lowry's. It's in Building 88, Unit H. It'll be a month-to-month agreement. And also a new access license to Paxton Incorporated for the 14 acres adjoining their leasehold, and it will terminate in 1 year on February 22nd, 2022.
Thank you, Todd. Board committees, we have no standing board committees at all. Board of Directors, this portion of the meeting is reserved for board members to comment on items not on the agenda. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I got a really nice email from Floyd Way. I've been yelling about handicap parking and that sort of thing near the entrance at the east end of the office building, and boy, that's beautiful. I've got to drive out there and take a look at that. That's really great. I commend Floyd and everybody involved in making that happen. Thank you.
Yes, it's nice. I made the mistake of tried to enter the east end of the admin building when I came over here today. Sign says, use the new entrance. So, and it's very nice.
Good.
Thank you, Floyd.
You're welcome. Thank you, Director Deaver and Director Ballantyne.
All right. Were there any other board member comments? All right. At this point, we'll go into closed session.
No public comment on items.
I always mix that up. Public comments. Members of the public may comment on comments to the board on items not on the agenda. Are there any members of the public that would like to make any comments? None being, we will now move into closed session. If those wanted to remain on, Jason will put you into the waiting room. When the board comes out of closed session and reports out, he'll allow you back in. Thank you very much for everyone for attending. Okay.
To the agenda in the previous meeting.
You can in the public meeting.
No. This is closed items. The whole point is there should be the equivalent in a closed session.
You can put something on the closed session, but you can do it in
I hear
the...
what you're saying.
Hang on, Bill.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, Bob, and we can talk about some of the legal issues surrounding that. So.
I mean, the whole point is some of those things are sensitive, so that
There's clear guidelines on those items too. You get it arbitrarily.
I know what the guidelines are. My point is, because of the sensitivity, you would want to bring it up in a closed session for future discussion.
Yeah,
that's all.
We're just waiting for Jason to notify us that we're back in.
You're good to go.
We're good to go. All right, Scott, go ahead.
In closed session, the board discussed potential litigation against Scaled Composites regarding Hangar 927. No action was taken. No other items were discussed.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Hey, Todd, Bill Deaver, would you quickly send me a copy of your CV for that Chamber of Commerce meeting on Thursday?